Hello there, and welcome to another Chit Chats with Git Cats. This one is number 28. They're going
live,
by
guys.
very quickly.
Live right now.
Oh, and I can hear
the
Thomas
link
talking in my headphones. So I'm going to throw straight over to my guest, Mr. Thomas McRocklin. Hey, Thomas.
Hello, look at me. I'm still putting the link on my swipe up on Instagram. So I'm like, good
Well, that's
morning.
perfectly fine.
Not so morning for you, right?
That's right. It's 10 to 8 in the PM over here, and that's fine by me.
That's some difference. Yeah, it's like, 10 to 11 in the morning. So I'm just getting started. I've only had one cup of tea. I haven't even had a coffee yet. So, yeah, I had a pretty late one last night as well. So.
Oh, did you? What have you been
if I
working?
fall off the chair, just shout a little bit in my ear, okay?
No worries at all. So you're just getting all
literally
your social
pasted the
media
link
stuff
to
out
my-
there. Yep.
I'm
I'll give you a
pasting
second.
it, and then I'm good to go, man. Yeah, can't
Hit
wait.
that paste button, mate. I'm going to make myself comfortable. I'm going to get all cross-legged, ready to talk.
I have a habit of doing that when I'm sitting mixing, and I'm sure it's probably really bad for our circulation. But when I'm sitting in my studio chair, I'm sitting in it cross-legged all the time for hours, and I'm thinking this can't be good. But it's the most comfortable way for me to sit and mix.
Totally. Well, you're actually seeing this view of me from my iMac, which I don't normally share with people, but I'm sitting in my pajama pants, mate. I got my little whiteboard, my little controller.
As well, so got to keep the comfort level high, right? That's the thing.
Totally. I think that's the key. And as I was saying to you before, mate, I've just found my comfort zone with doing these, and it's actually come about by going in unprepared and just whatever comes out.
Yeah, I think just sometimes the funniest stories and just directions take place when it's unscripted, right? And
Absolutely.
I've done a few kind of different types of interviews and seen different approaches from different people, and it's always probably a little bit more fun when there's a little bit of that kind of fly by the seat of your pants thing going on.
Absolutely. I was talking to Jennifer Batten a couple of days ago, and
Nice.
she had a dog on her lap, and it decided to do a big jump and took out the power cord and just ripped her whole laptop off its where it was sitting and just wiped it out. I didn't freak out. It was just
Nice.
that's the danger of live, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly, man. Yeah, it's something at some point. It's one of those things. For my setup right now, it's huge. I've got my amp set up over there, my pedal board's over there, my main computer's over there, and that feeds into another audio interface into here, which goes into the MacBook, and then the cams are coming in on different capture cards. Because we obviously want to have things like happy dancing on the screen, right?
Oh, hang on, let me go to that so you can just do that again, mate. I had it on a split screen. We didn't quite see that.
Oh, just whatever. Whatever. Got to have the horns and stuff,
Cool.
But there's just so much going on, so it's kind of inevitable. It's something it's going to go wrong at some point. And there we go. That is me done. So there we go.
Hopefully people will find us. You're all over the Instagram thing, aren't you? Is that what you were posting to just then?
Yeah, I was just putting the swipe up on Instagram. I love Instagram. The thing is with Instagram is it was the platform that suited me the most, because to jump right into my guitar playing history, I played a huge amount when I was a kid, did loads of touring and TV stuff, and just did a lot. And then I fell out of all of that, kind of by the time I was 17 or 18, I'd stopped playing guitar. So many years later, I started getting back into guitar, and Instagram was such a I didn't want to sit down and make a 45-minute long YouTube video. I wanted to just post these quick lick videos as I was practicing working out. So it just kind of went in hand with my routine at the time when I was practicing for hours. I'd stumble on a lick. I was okay, that's a cool lick. I'll do a quick snap of that. And then I kind of got a little bit obsessed with the whole thing and start getting into video editing and doing all these kind of more crazy camera moves on camera, which kind of started off a sort of new Instagram genre, I guess.
That looked really cool. That looks really cool. I have seen that. And I got to say, that's where I found you again, because I was familiar with you as a youngster, as we all were.
Cool.
And it wasn't until, I was on Instagram and something came up and I just went, oh my God, listen to him play now.
He's back. He's back.
He's back.
Wow.
So you said before that
you
said that you stopped playing altogether for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I like went down to playing as little as 10 minutes in 2 or 3 months, so I played so little that all the essential mechanics and motors and dexterity and strength, that was all gone, It's like I'd pick up a guitar and it felt absolutely horrendous. It felt really, really bad.
Wow.
Yeah, so I played like just next to nothing basically for about thick end of 20 years or so. Quite a period. I was producing and I was kind of doing stuff with music, kind of start off with more production, and that led into like mastering and other stuff. So I was kind of around music, but just not picking up guitar at all,
Yeah, right. Just completely burnt out, do you think?
Well, I mean, just to kind of go back on how that whole thing kind of came about, as in like just putting the guitar down, I guess from such a young age, I did so much. My first big break, was when I opened up for Ozzy Osbourne when I was 8 years old. And from that point onwards, I was doing TV stuff, and back and forwards down to London. I'm based up in Newcastle, kind of one of the northern cities in the UK. So it started off back and forwards to London doing TV stuff, and then that kind of escalated in other stuff. And then by the time I was 11 or 12, I'd signed with Interscope Records, and I was touring with Joe Satriani. Steve Vai produced the album. So it's like there's this whirlwind of stuff happening. And it kind of got to the point, well, there's two things. It kind of got to the point where when I was coming back to the UK and just doing normal kid stuff, hanging out with friends, that started to become the fun stuff. And going back on the road and doing all this other crazy stuff was suddenly less fun. And then at the same time, I really got into like rap and hip hop music. My favorite moments, like if I was in the Interscope Records offices in LA, they also had like Death Row Records. So I would always get much more of a buzz by seeing one of my favorite rappers in the building compared to like, oh, because that was my, by the time I was like 13, 14, I wasn't really listening to any guitar music anymore. Very, very little. I was mostly listening to like rap and hip hop.
Wow.
So I'd always get more of a kick about seeing guys, that I was like listening to. I was like, oh, look, So to kind of summarize on that, basically, by the time I was like 16, 17, I'd got my first sampler.
Mm-hmm.
And once I had that Akai sampler and then a Korg workstation, that was it. It was like overnight, the guitar became secondary and then it got pushed to the back. And back then, we're talking like early to mid 90s then at this point, there was no real cool way of integrating guitars with electronic music. It was like a complete hack around it. You could maybe record guitar into a sampler as a loop, but it wasn't like a natural thing. Now we have, I use Ableton. So it's like, you want a guitar? Okay, no problem. Let's get this guitar tone. Gain sound. You can go absolutely nuts and just record it, blend it, do whatever you like. But back then it was like that wasn't the case.
Yep.
So the guitar just got pushed back and back and back and back and back until eventually I was just mixing a lot of my own electronic music. But then I started to do that for other people as well, and that's where things changed again, because suddenly between making my own electronic music, by this point it kind of moved up a gear into like drum and bass and breakbeat, jungle sort of stuff. That was like the next thing I really got into. And I was producing other people, and then later I became a mastering engineer. And there was just never the guitar was just never in the picture during this periods, which went on for many, many years.
Yeah. Man, this all just sounds so familiar. You could be telling my story right now around the same time. I almost asked you, well, at what time did you stop playing and everything? And yeah, mid-90s, I went exactly down that rabbit hole. The turning point for me was seeing Nine Inch Nails live. I saw them live at a festival, and they came out, and it was an outdoor gig, and they had all these big bands on before them, and they all sounded like an outdoor gig. And Nine Inch Nails came on, and it just sounded like a huge stereo playing, and just with all the samples and everything, and that led me down that rabbit hole. And the same, I very rarely played much guitar, except for when I was writing or I was doing the production for everyone, so it all sounds very familiar. Very familiar.
Yeah. And maybe we can blame the Akai samplers, and that's it. Or maybe EMU sampler,
Ensonic for me.
Which Ensonic, there we go. That's a band. Are they still doing stuff?
I don't think they are.
I remember. Akai, EMU, Ensonic,
Yep. No, I was Ensonic guy. So, Thomas, you mentioned opening for Ozzy at the age of 8, and everybody knows you were the child star. I remember you in the Ibanez ads and everything, and then being on the Steve Vai film clips. Do you remember a time when you didn't play guitar?
No. I mean, I started playing the guitar when I was 4, and it was my dad's guitar. He always had a guitar in the house, so as soon as I could kind of pick up a guitar, and he used to always keep it behind the TV, and he'd go to work, and I'd pull it out, and even when I was tiny, I'd be playing on the strings and stuff. And I have even from a very young age, I have a really obsessive personality. So, by the time I was 7 and 8, I was already playing 10 hours a day. That was it. I was just obsessed in guitar. There was nothing else. Very little distractions back then. I remember when Nintendo came on the scene. Suddenly I was pumping some hours into Nintendo stuff. But no, I can't remember a time where I wasn't around guitars or into them or playing them, or looking at the back of guitar magazines and seeing some of my favorite guitars and stuff, watching David Lee Roth videos, all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said your dad played. Did he show you much at the beginning? Was he your teacher? Or Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he was into guitar enough basically he used to listen to Led Zeppelin and Ozzy and Van Halen, and that was my thing as well. So we kind of go cruising together. He was into that type of music enough that it would warrant having a guitar around the house. Yep. He wasn't a shredder or a virtuoso or anything like that. Funnily enough, though, his name is John McRocklin, which is it was hilarious when we'd go to the States because everybody'd be like, oh, it's John McRocklin, a.k.a. the famous jazz guitarist, with his son Thomas McRocklin, this other guitarist. And then it would always take him a while to figure out that he wasn't that John McRocklin. But it was always funny initially, seeing that, kind of reaction on their face when it would be okay, John McLaughlin's here now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he kind of taught me my first chords and chord changes. Thin Lizzy, the boys are back in town, when I kind of got that chord change. I think that was a defining moment, actually, because, at some point, every guitarist, they pick up a guitar and it's they play something that makes sense or it's recognizable. It's oh, there we go. It's happening now. I'm on the way, So I'm pretty sure I still remember that moment sitting on the couch and then the chord change, it was in time with the music, and that was a big thing. Just moving those power chords around. It's wow, okay. And that began the spark of everything, I guess.
Cool. And what a great way to get into it, huh? So when I saw you playing as a 7-year-old on TV and stuff, you had all the Van Halen stuff down, the tapping and that. Did your dad pass that on to you, or was that just something that you watched on TV and thought, I can see what he's doing there?
Yeah, no, that was just me watching Hot Licks, David Lee Roth videos and anything else that I could get at that time. My dad definitely wasn't a tapper or a shredder, He used to always say he just didn't have the sort of finger speed for it. So luckily, my granddad was actually a really great accordion player. So he thinks I got my granddad's genes from the playing side of things.
Wow.
But no, he wasn't it was really difficult actually because in the northeast of the UK, there wasn't really like a huge. I mean, there's guitar stores and stuff, but there just wasn't the resources or the teachers to kind of instill a lot of that stuff that I was into. And you'd always try and drive me for miles to try and find a teacher that would be able to bring something to the table. And he was always kind of like that, even when we go to LA, you try and find these amazing guys, so that led to me sitting down with people like Ted Green. And I used to, my bedtime reading material was reading Ted Green's chord books, and they were just like absolutely immense, and it's like that would be like my bedtime stuff right there.
Wow.
So he was always keen on like hunting out and find these guys. But in the UK, in Newcastle, we couldn't really get that so much, and we tried a few different teachers, and it didn't really work out. And bear in mind, like at this point, my progression's like just going up rapidly, so that caused an even bigger problem. But one kind of really cool thing that came out of it, he found a really great classical teacher, and a theory teacher. So that was like a really cool thing that really those lessons really stuck with me from like even till right now. They're in my playing. The classical stuff was like fantastic, even though it was quite strict. And sometimes, I'd knock on the guy's door and not actually press the doorbell because I didn't want to go in that day because he was a hard ass.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, he taught me a lot of theory, the technique, and a lot of stuff that would be really useful in my electric playing.
Mm-hmm.
And from my theory lessons with another guy, combined with the classical lessons, that really helped just make the fretboard more like a playground. It kind of opened up everything, which was a great thing. And like I say, kind of that has been a big part of my playing ever since. So,
okay.
So no real electric guitar lessons, I guess, but lessons with classical and theory, and just try and stoke things up where possible.
Did you start out on a full-size guitar, or did you have something smaller that you could play on?
Mm-hmm. No, straight to full size. Even when I was 4 and 5,
Yep.
That was it. The only guitar that I ever had that was slightly smaller was one of the custom guitars that Ibanez made for me, which was a full-size guitar, full-size neck, like a 25.5 scale. But they shaved the body down a little bit,
Okay.
which made it really cool because the body ended up being like this sort of size. So super cool.
Awesome.
But no, it was always like straight to full size,
Yep. So you said that the classical lessons really helped you with your approach to the fretboard.
Mm.
Man, that's something I struggle with. I have times away from the guitar because of tendonitis and things like that. And so I probably won't touch it for a couple of months. And I come back and my knowledge of the fretboard, I've got my little pentatonic shape. Oh, we're in A minor. I'm going to play at the 5th fret. And anything outside of that, I got to think about it for a couple of days and get that knowledge back in. But did that, because you took it up so young, is it completely ingrained in you that you just look at it as one whole thing?
Never goes away. Never goes away. And actually, I never think about theory. Well, I think about very little. When I'm playing, I'm always interested in reacting to what I hear. But behind all of that is the layers of theory, which are just sitting there. So a lot of people might have a thinking process, like they hear a chord and they go, okay, I'm going to go for some mixolydian type of sounds. And it's just like this layers of thinking that you just want to remove, because for me, I always loved jamming and improvising. And that was like probably one of my greatest skills. The fact that even though I was like a little dude, I could go on a lot of stages and just jam with people. So even when we had like, the Jason Becker benefit concert, I was playing with Zach Wilde and Steve Luthiker and myself and a couple others, and we had this like massive jam session. And it was like totally a comfortable thing where some people, they kind of crumble in a jam situation and they are fantastic at kind of repetition type playing. Mm-hmm. But so for me, it's kind of, I just don't have that issue, thankfully. And but I loved passing that stuff on, so recently we put a lesson out on my school, how to unlocking the fretboard, and the feedback on that has been like absolutely crazy. Like, we get so many messages and emails about that particular lesson.
Wow.
It's unreal.
So
Love it.
you said starting off that young and being able to pick up things. I hear that it's a lot easier to develop perfect pitch at a young age. Do you have perfect pitch? Do you have note recognition? Like, can you go, oh yeah, it's an A?
Yeah,
so
I mean, what I would actually practice quite a lot, because I hear the notes before I play them, and now probably a lot of that is because you play that much, you know exactly how it's going to sound. But for example, if I hear like an E or a G sharp, one thing I could do is, like, maybe a lot of people do this. I don't think it's anything special. All that sort of stuff. So if you hear the notes before you can play them, my singing voice is probably terrible.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
But like, you hear the notes exactly. So that way you don't have any surprises, because what you don't want when you're playing is this feeling sort of thing. So like, if you've got some distortion on, you're in D and the chords are like, and you're kind of going for like a pentatonic thing. What you don't really want to do is like have this situation where you're like going, okay, is this going to be a good note right here? You're kind of feeling around and moving it around and stuff.
Yep.
So you just want to have like the confidence that you're going to deliver something and you know exactly how it's going to sound the split second before you play it. Now, with me, I love bending the rules, and I have tons of chromatic in my playing, and obviously chromatic, doesn't belong always to a certain key. Mm-hmm. So I love like taking notes that don't belong to a natural key and kind of phrasing them in, because phrasing is like a huge part of my playing. So I love kind of doing quirky stuff, but making it sound like note choices that shouldn't work, but making them sound really cool. I love doing that stuff.
Awesome. Now, you were very lucky in that you had Steve Vai as a mentor from a very young age. What type of things did he instill into your playing that you're aware of and you go, I got that from Steve, or just lessons?
Sure. It's very interesting because all the time that I was around Steve and living with Steve, he wasn't really playing, and the times that we'd play together tended to be more on stage, So, for example, a couple of times, me, Steve, and Joe Satriani were on stage together, and it was because we were all in the same city at the same time, or Joe would be playing and Steve would be in town, and I'd go down and three of us would play. So that was like the times that we played together on stage is the times that we played together the most. So we didn't really sit down and play. In fact, during the recording process, during the sort of tracking and mixing of the Bad for Good record that Steve produced, Steve actually himself wasn't playing at all. I think he had about 6 months off from even picking up a guitar.
Wow.
So you'd very rarely see Steve picking up a guitar at that time. And I remember that at the end of it, you'd kind of start to go up to the vault where all his guitars and sort of extra gear was, and you started to kind of get back into playing and practicing again. So the stuff that I took from Steve often was something that I was even more interested in, though, which was like the production side of things. I love being in the studio and being around the gear and the console. And Steve was like, he's always been a gear nut, So he had a company called Light Without Heat, which was like a gear rental company. And there was just tons of gear everywhere. There was tons of gear in the mothership. There's all these different amps coming and going from different brands that wanted probably Steve to check it all out. But he explained like the mixing console in a way that kind of makes sense, So, sitting at a big mixing desk for a young kid, like, it's like, what does all this do, So, I even remember like he explained the bus system, how all of that worked in a way that kind of made total sense. So obviously at a young age, Steve, as a player was like definitely an influence on my first cycle of playing, now I play really different to how I play as a sort of kid slash teenager.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a couple of tracking situations where we were tracking rhythm guitars, and there was a sort of one part that he was showing me like he wanted to have this certain effect on it, which was like whipping the strings really fast. And at that time, I was using 2 mil picks. When I was whipping it, it was really like it would often kind of pull the tuning out, or it would be the wrong technique. So we kind of learned, how to do that for a certain part, and he kind of picked up the guitar up and showed me that. And that was one of the few times that we had that kind of one-to-one, almost like a lesson type of situation, because most of it was like tracking and then going out on Hollywood Boulevard and having pizza and watching movies and hanging out,
Yep. One thing that I did notice, it was a few years ago, I stumbled on the TrueFire website, and there was about 5 hours of instruction from Steve on there. And I paid to watch that. And a friend of mine sat in on that. And at the start, he said, if you're here to learn about scales and all that kind of thing, there's a million people that can teach that better than I can. If you come here to learn more about the mindset and the philosophy, then stick around, let's talk. Yeah. And that's one thing I've noticed just from his live streams recently as well. He's all about that, the mindset of things, the zen of it all. Is that what you picked up from him as well? A lot of that stuff?
Yeah, I think we're probably very similar in that way. Obviously, he went through, things like working with Zappa, and there would have been a ton of theory, and just he's handed stuff on paper, and you'd have to recite it and learn it and play it exactly, So he obviously had that upbringing, that he had lots and lots of theory installed. But I think that ultimately he's probably similar to me in that sense that we don't think of it too much at the forefront. We kind of play on reaction and emotion and approach, phrasing and stuff. So I guess in that sense, we're probably quite similar. I'm much more interested in a great vibe of a solo and something that resolves really nicely than something that is perfect and has tons of, flashy techniques in it. It's great to pull on those things, but it's much cooler to have like a solo that's just phrased wonderfully, and it just like it speaks a lot, And with my band, McRocklin and Hutch, because we don't really have a vocalist. We have some tracks that feature vocals, but predominantly it's instrumental music. So the guitars in that role have to take on like a vocal like delivery. So it's really super important that it doesn't turn into like 3-4 minute shred tracks, which it could easily be. And it's like you listen to it and everything kind of has lines and questions and answers, and it's just more melodic. And then obviously we have those big flashy moments where everything goes crazy, but for the most part you can put it on your car and just cruise to it,
Yeah. I think that really sets apart. I did buy your solo album, forgive me for not remembering the name of it, about 2 years ago or something. I think it came out.
New Beginnings.
New Beginnings. Yep. And I was just had that on high rotation for a while. Loved it. And then I saw you start to put out a few little flashy promos for the McRocklin and Hutch. McRocklin and Hutch, sorry. And what struck me about that straight away was the 80s vibe and the synth bass type of thing, which is, I love that, that quantized kind of sound. And so explain the McRocklin and Hutch. Who is Hutch in that situation? Is he the synth guy? Or
Yeah, for sure. So McRocklin and Hutch, I mean, we started doing stuff a couple of years ago now. Hutch, Tim Hutchinson, is somebody that I used to master his tracks for. And cool. He's a fantastic electronic producer, and he's just super prolific. And he'd send the tracks over to me whilst I was kind of in mastering mode. And I knew him longer than the time where he was doing electronic music. I remember back in the day, because he's always been a fantastic guitarist, and he's from my local area. So we would cross paths like over the years, different studios, different settings, and we've known each other for a long time. and he's known what I've been doing, and he's sending tracks over, but we've just never until recently kind of got together and put something to fruition. So he kind of got into synthwave about the same time as me, I guess. And a year or so ago, I did a track with Gunship, who were one of my favorite synthwave bands, and I really love their stuff. And I was lucky enough to do a solo on one of their tracks, and it turned out great. And it was just so much fun as a genre, because we really pull heavily from the 80s vibe, and that's where me and Tim were like really listening to like all of the 80s shred players, but also that sort of synth side of things as well. So it's been really fun to kind of put that together, and we've already kind of sort of dancing in around different subgenres, and the last couple of tracks have been a little bit heavier and a little bit more riff based, but we're still kind of continue to keep that 80s retro theme. So I think because me and Tim were like a similar age, and we've both kind of we have such fond memories of that era. So to kind of draw on that, and it just so happens to be a great genre for like shredding over. It's just been a lot of fun, and the reactions to the tracks have been great. And now also because Tim typically has been doing the music side of things, and he sends it over to me, and I put my guitar side of things down and finish off on the production and mastering, and then we kind of go back and forth like that. Because Tim's also an awesome shredder, now we're bringing Tim into the sort of shred scene as well. So I think, obviously there's no gigs right now. It's like maybe we can do online gigs. Uh-huh. But we not so long ago, we toured with Dragon Force. And, it was a great experience, and we learned a lot. And we weren't even at this stage thinking about doing touring and gigging and stuff, but we got asked to do the tour, and it was just like, it turned out to be like really, really cool. But we kind of just had the best part about it was like all of the stuff that we learned that we'd like to do in the future. So just doing like extra fun things, bringing Tim onto the shred, I could throw my guitar through him and do all this kind of fun stuff. So on the sort of back of that kind of led to the kind of future version of McRocklin Hutch, which is starting to come through now with tracks like Italian Disco and Black Line, which are much more aggressive, and they feature more and more guitars. But again, it's not like a shred fest. It's just fun stuff that you can listen in the car and have fun with it, But yeah, so me and Tim, we're still working together. We've got a bunch of tracks in the pipeline. We just finished off another one over the last day or so, and yeah, it's a lot of fun, man.
Nice. It's good to find somebody like that that you can work with then, huh? And just have such cool music come out. Yeah. So
yeah,
you mentioned the whole shred thing. And one thing that really impresses me about you is there's a million guys out there that can shred, and most of them cannot compose a decent melody to save their life because they've spent so much time woodshedding that stuff that they forget the stuff that matters. Yet you, from what I hear in your playing, will play beautiful melodies with that, what I like to call liquid in between that joins it. It's like, and it's very reminiscent of string lines from back in the 70s and 80s TV shows, I think, all those. I was just going to go there, but now I'm going to go.
Cool.
In terms of melodic players, who are some of the influences that have really put that into your head?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like, I used to love guys like Django Reinhardt, Chet Atkins, Danny Gatton, and I obviously listened to Satriani, Steve Vai, Randy Rhoads. Those were my three guys until I hit like 9 or 10, and by the time we started going to the US and cruising around in the car with my dad in the US, then we started listening to like Danny Gatton and all these other Roy Buchanans and all these different guys like that, more blues stuff, some more jazzy sort of stuff, and then I would listen to some classical stuff between that. So I guess a lot of that stuff from a melodic point of view,
well, that was awkward. Sorry, Thomas. I hit the wrong button on my
That's all
controller.
right.
I've broken out in a bit of a sweat all of a sudden. It's gotten very hot in my winter, so I'm going to take this off. I hope people can find us.
Guys, on that last link, when you go to it, you'll go to the channel. We had a little outage there, but we are back now. So head to the channel, and you will see live V2 where we will finish everything off. So see you soon. Bye.
The danger of live. There you go. So I'm just going to check out that I can see that we are live over on my channel. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking. People can find us because, you know, in all honesty, we get a lot more viewers after the fact, mate. So I was really sorry to cut you off then, but you were talking about just all the great players that you heard driving around with your dad in the States.
Yeah, so, you know, guys, like Chon, for example, that's probably what I was talking about. You know, that band features a couple of fantastic guitarists, great shred, great technical players, but wrapped in songs that you can listen to and chill to. So I'd much rather listen to something like that as opposed to something that was like 5 minutes of like technical brilliance. But it's like, you know, mind-numbing. Just can't take it. So I guess following on from the question, you know, where did some of the influence come on, and why do you have that sort of approach you play? And it's just, I can't listen to crazy out and outright shred for long periods of time, and I'd much rather have, you know, melodies that are interesting and playful, I guess, and that also resolve nicely as well. So yeah,
I gotta say,
have that balance, man.
Absolutely. I got to say, I went to the Melbourne Guitar Show last year over here in Australia, and by halfway into the first day, I couldn't get out of there quick enough. The sound of it sounded like bush turkeys, just everywhere I went.
I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, I did NAMM at the last NAMM show, and I did a bunch of performances from booth to booth, different brands that I work with, and yeah, I took my wife with me, and she was expecting a nice, you know, holiday in California, and then she got 4 days of the NAMM show. But we did have some chill out time at the end of it. But yeah, I mean, the weekend, like Friday and Saturday, especially at NAMM, is crazy. It's just like, oh my god. Especially, you know, in brands that are like really brands that just have a lot of hype around them. Kiesel guitars, you know, the Kiesel booth was packed all the time, and you know, because a lot of players that play Kiesel know me, every time we'd go there for like 10 minutes, we'd literally be there for like 2 or 3 hours, and we just couldn't get away. And it was you know, it was fun, you know, because I enjoyed meeting people, but yeah, it's just crazy at the same time.
I know. I've been to NAMM, not last year, but the one before, and I actually. I seeked you out to just get a photo with you, actually. You probably wouldn't remember. You'd have so many people. But I'd see you were being at this booth, and by the time I get there, you'd be gone, and then you'd post, I'm going to be at such and such a booth. But one place I didn't go near was the drum section. I could hear it from afar, and I'm just going, I am not going anywhere near that. Yeah,
I crossed through that a couple of times, and I actually met up with Brooks Wackerman, who was, you know, he's a longtime friend of mine. He was a drummer from Bad for Good. He now drums with Avenged Sevenfold. So we had like a Bad for Good reunion
cool.
in the drum section of all places, because I think Brooks was doing something with which brand? I think it was like DW or something. And yeah, it was just chaos, you know. It was just like the four of us plus our friends and my wife, and you know, trying to like have this catch-up conversation while this guy is just going, gah, gah, gah. It's just like, whoa, it's just like surreal, you know, having this kind of like catch-up with all this crazy stuff going on. It's like, oh, let's move on, shall we? Let's take this outside.
Is that his real name, Wackerman, like being a drummer, and his last name is Wackerman?
Yeah, that's it. This is, you know, Chad Wackerman, his brother, famous drummer, played with Zapper and stuff.
Yep.
His whole family is just like amazing drummers. His dad, Chuck, phenomenal drummer, and his dad was there. I hadn't seen Chuck for like so many years, from probably when I was like maybe like that big, doing the bad for good thing.
Yeah.
But so it was great to see Chuck as well. But yeah, the Wackerman family.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
those whacking things.
Mate, I just need to change the battery in my camera, which happened to go out right then as well. I can't get a power supply for this thing. I've looked high and low, but that's okay. I'm going to ask you about your kiesel guitar, because you used to be an Ibanez guy, but I see that you're playing the kiesel now. Give us a look at that and tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so this is one of my many kiesel guitars that I've got in my collection in a short period of time. And I mean, first of all, Headless, I was never really intending on playing Headless, but at NAMM a couple of years back, I picked up a Headless guitar, and I kind of really liked the balance and the feel of it. So if you haven't picked up a Headless guitar, for me, I'm like, I really like the look, but some people are like, oh, I've got to have a great looking headstock on there. So first of all, I think initially you just need to pick up a Headless guitar and just realize the benefits of like the balance,
Cool.
So this one is called an Osiris, and it's probably my second most used guitar, I guess. The other one is the purple Zeus, which you see me playing a lot. So some of my favorite specs that I always kind of spec out where I can is, I like ash bodies, and in particular, I like really light bodies. At this one, I don't know if we can get a kind of close up on the neck. Has a flamed maple roasted neck.
Beautiful.
And I love the feel of like a roasted neck. It's just great. We have Fishman. This one has the Tosin pickups in it. 5-way super switch, push pulls. But it's really light, really comfortable. Pretty thin neck profile. Probably not as thin as like an Ibanez Wizard series, but it's a great feeling neck. Stainless steel frets, and just sounds and plays just great,
Wow.
Great cleans, if you want like.
Very nice. Very nice.
Love them. So,
I'm just going to set this up again so I've got my new camera, or my old camera back in. There I am. There's you. Yep, we're back. Wait, I think what I'm going to do is actually download our first one before it dropped out, and this one, combine them together and then re-upload as one. So I think we'll be sweet. But can you use just standard strings on that guitar, or do you need the double ball ends?
No, absolutely. So just regular, I use D'Adario's 9 to 42, so NYXLs or the XTs. Regular strings.
Yeah.
Ball end comes through, goes up the top, snip it off. All good. So no funky strings. All good. In fact, I need to do some restringing. So I've got like 5 or 6 headless kiesels now, and I basically rotate through them depending on string freshness, because we all kind of get a little bit lazy. So I'm going to restring a couple of them live on Instagram and just hit the live, have a bit of chat, put some music on, do some guitar restring. I'm going to do that like probably in a couple hours time. So we've got some school lessons to edit for the site.
Yep.
Going to be some restring time.
The site being is that the School of Rock? Is that what it's called? The School of McRock.
Rock. So it's a little bit of a play on words, School of Rock, School of McRock. But, I'll tell you a little bit about that. Last year I was teaching a lot on Skype. Every day, lesson after lesson. And it got to the point where there was a definite pattern that was happening. People were feeling like they were playing the same licks over and over, or they were playing for hours and practicing for hours, but they couldn't kind of get the fretboard to feel like it was their playground. They felt like they were boxed in on certain positions. They just couldn't express themselves. So a lot of the things like that were coming up more and more often. to go to the point where I was like, well, instead of doing all these Skype lessons, why not just kind of put an actual online site together where we address all these problems and make it, for the price of a single Skype lesson, you can get a whole year of School of McRock. And then suddenly it's like, okay, let's keep pushing that idea. And then now we do like a new lesson every week. We have a live masterclass every week. You get a brand new jam track every week. We've got brands doing some amazing giveaways. We've given away like 100 sets of D'Addario strings, Fishman pickups, Horizon devices, overdrive pedals, and we've got tons more brands like just kind of ready to roll out with the giveaways. So we do giveaways, and then we've got our own private chat as well, which is like grown really nicely, and we have tons of people on there all helping each other out. I'm hanging out in the live chat all the time. So it's schoolofmcrock.com, and basically the lessons themselves are designed to, I got asked by a lot of companies to do educational content for various sites over the last couple of years. And one thing that really drove me insane was like, I'd go on some of these sites and it felt like you had to invest 2 hours of your day to learn this one thing. It was just like really overwhelming. It's like, this is just not fun at all. So our lessons are really designed to be bite-sized, but straight to the useful stuff, So the stuff that I've worked on for years and hours and just kind of busted my balls onto to kind of really perfect. If I can pass that on in a 10 to 15 minute lesson that you can have a cup of coffee, watch the lesson, and get some really amazing insights that you instantly can put into your playing, I love that, And it was one of the things I'd get the most buzzes out when I was doing Skype lessons. We'd have like the first initial lesson, and it wouldn't be like a consultation. It'd be like play a little bit, I'd show them some stuff, and then point stuff out straight away that would instantly have a impact on their playing. So if they could get like 20% better in the first Skype lesson, their minds was like blown, but I love that. It was like my favorite thing. I'd get a massive kick out of that. So I try to pack in, even though we might have lessons like essential arpeggios that everybody should know, unlocking the fretboard, and all these, we have tons of lessons because we upload a new one every week. But on the title it says that, but whilst I'm explaining it, I'm always explaining also like the reasons why you want to do things a certain way. So I'm kind of always giving additional insights. But yeah, it's like we launched it in December, and it's been great, and the feedback in comments is like overwhelmingly positive, and we're just getting started. Like recently we started doing guest lessons from around the world, and they're free. It's just like additional lessons. You get to see a fresh perspective on another international guitarist. We're getting some really cool guests come through, and we've got like I think 4 or 5 guests on there right now. I've also launched a production series, so like all the production stuff that I do, cool. How to do things in certain ways, and we've got a whole series of that we're going to walk through, and they're additional lessons. So there's just a lot of stuff going on every day.
Man, I'm totally. You've signed me up. I want to sign up to this. This sounds absolutely amazing, and I've been playing for 30 or more years. That's covering all the stuff that I want to learn.
It's great.
How do we find it?
Fun way. It's schoolofmcrock.com. That is it. You get a 14-day free trial, so you can check it out. And even if you're on like the monthly subscription, it's like $12.99 a month for like all of this crazy amounts of stuff, and it's even cheaper if you do it annually. So that was the idea. So for about the price of a single Skype lesson, you get a new lesson every week, plus all the lives, the chat, the backing tracks, the gear giveaway entries. This is a lot of stuff. So
sounds like there's some McNuggets of gold in there.
Definitely.
That was my bad attempt at a there.
But yeah. So we've got I was just shooting a new lesson last night, actually really late, and it's kind of explaining how to take really common note choices, that's like, your bread and butter note choices, but how to make them sound really, really cool. And then it's also using a little bit of hybrid picking as well. And a lot of people feel a little bit uneasy about using hybrid picking, so I kind of explain how you can use that in your playing. But again, it's going to be like a 15-minute lesson, and with that one, you'll get tabs, backing track, and some insights about how you can take E minor in this case and make it sound like, well, it's actually a breakdown of a McRocklin and Hutch Distorted Dreams solo, and it sounds like an amazing solo when you hear it on the record, but when you break it down and you see what's going on, it's just down to no choice. So that's today's lesson. That's going up in a few hours or so. And yeah, I love it though. It's just a lot of fun, and I really love engaging with the members on the chat. You know, that's just like a growing favorite feature of mine. It's a lot of fun.
Cool, man. I'm definitely going to sign up for that. Now, Thomas, I've seen some very cool guitars in your collection. We just talked about your kiesel there, but you've got some other iconic guitars in your collection, haven't you?
Yeah. I've got like just on the other side of these cameras, I've got a couple of racks of them.
So
obviously, I've got a lot of historic Ibanez and stuff like that as well. So.
Am I right in thinking you've got the guitar that's on the cover of Passion and Warfare, the swirl Ibanez? You've got that, haven't you?
I do have that guitar. Yeah, the prototype Universe, the 7-string, the one with the handle. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, very cool guitar.
Yeah. I mean, those must... They're iconic, man. Like, do you often look across the room and just sort of go, that's that guitar? Or have you just grown up with them and you don't...
There's two guitars which are not really kept around, my studio, which is like the Flame guitar that Steve gave me and the Universe guitar that Steve gave me. I mean, those guitars, I actually get them out, like, often and just check them all over and stuff. But, the Universe guitar, there's just that guitar, there's something very special about it. I mean, when you pick it up and you play it, it's like, it's got a vibe about it, and also it actually plays amazing. So I'm not surprised that it was probably used on, Passion and Warfare so heavily, because the tone of it is just unbelievable. The neck is like really thin, and it makes playing that 7-string like really easy. But it's just like, it has a voice, and it's like, it says a lot, and it's faded, and it's like, it's many, many years old now. And it's like in the same condition as like, probably, I guess when Steve wrapped up, maybe he brought it into some of the Whitesnake stuff, and he was touring and gigging, and, and then he gave it to me, I think it was after I did the audience's listening video. Yeah. It was sent over to my hotel room with one of the Ibanez artist relation guys. It's like, there's a present here from Steve for you.
Wow.
Open it up, like that guitar with a copy of Passion Warfare on cassette, because it hadn't released then.
Nice.
Crazy.
I actually just found my cassette copy. It's right in the next room of Passion and Warfare. So
that's crazy.
So that's the 7-string. Have you played around with like 8, 9-string or anything like that?
I picked them up. It's a funny thing. I really think I'm a 6-string guy. I play in standard tuning. I play 9 to 42 strings. I've tried 7 and 8, and maybe I just haven't invested in enough time. But I think there's just so much stuff to explore on a 6-string. But I do love, Tosin Abasi. I think he's a phenomenal player, and like when I see him play. And we've hung out a bunch of times, and even when you're up close, you see some stuff. It's like, it's really, really cool that the way he implements lower scales and those additional strings that he's playing. Very, very cool. So I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll just get like a multi-scale 8-string kiesel or something, just to chuck 5 or 10 minutes here and there at. But I don't see me switching over full time.
Yeah.
I think I'm just a 6-string guy.
Yeah. So in terms of 6-string, do you have the standards that everybody seems to have, a Strat, a Tele, Les Paul, or are you more the Super Strat?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I really, got into Ibanez when I was like 8 or so, and that's when I got my first gem. And, I still remember this day, like opening the case with that pink fluffy material and that sweet smell. I was like, oh, But yeah, so I think once I hit that gem, in like 88 or so, 87, 88, that was it. I was with Ibanez until many, many, many years later. And even when I returned to guitar, it was the first thing I went to, and they were super helpful, and they were right there and really supportive when I needed new instruments to get going again. So, big props to Ibanez and the whole team over there. So Super Strat is probably, that'd be like my most used guitar.
Yep.
But I do have like a Steve Vai Strat. I have a custom pink Les Paul thin body style. I have a BC Rich Tony McAlpine. I have a Hamer, which is a Steve Stevens model, and some random classical and other acoustics. I have a Loudon acoustic, which I've had since like the 90s, which is another really beaten up guitar, but it's just so fun. And then, and more recently, obviously, I've started playing Headless Kiesels, and I have a bunch of Kiesels and some of their Strat styles and neck through shapes as well. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned like about returning back to the guitar after much time away. Was it was it a conscious decision? Was it a thing of, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a go again, or did it just slowly hook you back in? Did you have a bit of a play? And
yeah, I mean, guys that I knew in the music industry that were friends of mine that were doing completely different stuff to what I was doing, they kind of knew of my history and past, and would often put guitars in my hands to they try and tempt me to play again. And for the longest time, I'd pick the guitar up, and it felt, after taking such a long time off from the guitar, it felt awful to kind of play. It was just like, oh, boxing gloves. There was just nothing, there. I couldn't execute what was in my head, and I knew I'd have like a real hard year ahead of me the moment that I decided to kind of go back in. But my friend would keep, tempting me, and I think at one point I picked up my Steve Vai Strat, and I put a video on Facebook, and I just got a lot of views compared to what I was expecting, and the comments were just like crazy. I was like, oh, that actually wasn't so bad. It was fun.
Yep.
Let me do another one. And then I was like, next thing you know, I'm like, okay, I'm uploading these random stuff like basketball. I was really into basketball, so my other account was like, just doing random stuff on Instagram. So I started at McRocklin on Instagram and started posting these licks. And then, that obsessive personality that I have, it's like, there's no halfway. It's like, okay, we're full time, or it's all in or nothing. And the kind of love of playing guitar quickly returned, and before long I'm sitting in the living room for 10 hours a day, sitting really close to the amp and working on stuff like crazy and just going absolutely nuts on it. But I mean, one thing I could say about that whole thing is like taking such a break and then coming back. I mean, I came back initially with a similar sound to how I left, and then I went to LA and played in different Bogner, Amp Factory, and different brands stuff. And I heard some stuff like it was almost like because I had a lot of Steve Vai influence in my playing the first time through, and I didn't want that to happen again. But obviously when I first picked up the guitar, it naturally continued where I left off. And then, during the kind of comeback of, not thinking socially here, just as a playing point of view, a couple of years back, 2017, I remember I was like, okay, I definitely don't want this in my playing. I don't want that in my playing. I want this in my playing. I want this in my playing. And then there was this sudden shift. And that was the starting point of the sound that I have now. Just through practicing a certain way, pushing my fingers to do things that they didn't want to do in a certain way, working really heavily on, picking. I really obviously like rap music. Picking to me is like a way of kind of getting rap-like phrasing into your playing. So it was like all these different elements, and then suddenly the sound that I have now started to emerge.
So,
but it took a long time.
I bet.
A year.
Yeah, cool. So, earlier you said about production kind of pulling you away from the instrument. Do you think that maybe there was like an element of just expectation on you, like being that young and just having so many eyes on you? Do you think that had something to do with it as well? Like just like, wow, everyone's expecting me to be this monster and I just want to be a kid. Is that something that crept in?
I mean, I really didn't think of it so much like that. I mean, just when I was a kid doing TV stuff and gigs and touring stuff, it would be like a relatively small part of the day-to-day routine. So one thing my dad was always like really amazing at, as if we went to let's say LA, we'd have to have X amount of time in Disneyland. We'd have to have a hotel that had a pool and stuff. So you try and keep a lot of the fun kid-like stuff in my life, whilst on the evening we'd go do this gig in this random place, which was like amazing. So but that often was just like a small part of the day, and he'd always try and have this fun stuff. So I think because of that, I never really thought about I didn't really overthink it and let that become a problem. It just, I think more than anything, it's just like my obsessive personality. It's like, all right, I'm into this now, I'm into that, right, that's gone. I'm into this now, that's it. We don't have enough time for this, drop that. And it's like, that's the way it kind of goes. And I also got into like gaming as well, like when I was like 16, 17, maybe, 16, 17, 18, I got into Counter-Strike and got so into gaming, I ended up being on a professional Counter-Strike team that was sponsored by Intel. And again, that's like that obsessive personality,
Yep.
And I got really heavily into esports before it. Well, it was just kind of blowing up at that time, online streaming was much more of a niche thing than now. Everybody's like online streaming games.
Okay. So that whole obsessive thing, have you ever been diagnosed as having ADD?
I don't think so, because, it's like I can like just switch off completely, go on holiday, chill out, not really think about things and switch off entirely. And, I think it's just a personality trait.
Yeah.
Where everything I want to do, it's like you're either going to do it to the best of your ability, and then, I'm not like, I'm competitive in some ways, but I'm for example, I think I'm very competitive in some ways, but not in the other way. So, for example, I could sit down and I could jam with somebody that's played guitar for 3 weeks and have an absolute blast, But at the same time, if you put me on stage with, an icon, I'm not going to shy away from that opportunity, and kind of crumble. I'm going to kind of go in blazing and try and, take them down.
Yep.
So I have that kind of like a streak in me, I think, which just like, all right, and I got into basketball and competitive esport gaming, and, maybe some of that stuff comes from that. But, it's a funny thing. But I think confidence is a big thing when you're playing. It's actually an issue that a lot of people have as well, because, a lot of people, this is going back to my Skype lessons, the guitar music store situation, or the gig situation where guitarists, they play great at home, they've practiced really hard and they've got their chops down, but then they go to the music store to try a guitar, and then suddenly tunnel vision is like, it's pound them really hard, and then the licks that they were working on, they're nowhere to be found and stuff. And it's a mindset thing, and it's something that we have had discussions about in a couple of the live masterclasses, how to deal with that, because there's nothing worse. You invest so many hours in your craft, right? You go to a gig to jam with somebody, you go to a guitar store, and it's like you strip that down to this like the sort of basic stuff that you can remember. It's like,
yeah.
So, but
it's being put on the spot. Yeah, it really does either fold or you come good. Are you aware of an Australian?
Talk about that.
Are you aware of an Australian guitar player named Nathan Cavalieri, who was also like a young guy? He was nowhere your level, man. Like, he was on TV. He was famous because he had a wish when he was 5 years old or something. He had cancer, leukemia, to meet Mark Knopfler, and he got to jam with Mark at that young age, and he had a few people sort of take him in, and he was nothing on you. He was nothing on you, but he was quite famous over here. Now the pressure got to him, and he just got to a point where he couldn't play live anymore. He did get pretty good eventually with all the mentorship from BB King and all these guys, but he got to a point, from what I understand, where anxiety just completely took a hold of him, and he as well just dropped out of the scene. And I was aware that he was writing jingles for a while behind the scenes, so just like you went into production, he was doing similar. And he's only just come good and gone out and to play, but he's got more that blues kind of thing, whereas technically, you're 11. Have you heard of him, Nathan Cavalieri?
I haven't heard of the name. I mean, I might recognize him. I mean, sometimes I'm terrible with names. So I'll spot somebody and okay, yes, I know this guy. But it's, anxiety and stuff, and playing in front of an audience, and it's a different thing entirely,
Mate, of the new generation of guys that are out there, all the Instagrammers and the YouTubers and stuff, is there some guys out there that you just go, holy hell, look at what this guy's playing? What are some of the names that spring to mind for you?
I mean, you probably have maybe top 5 guitarists, that are doing music and also Instagram. Some of the, it's an interesting thing, right? Because some of the guys that impress me the most are guys that I don't really listen to. And it's not because it's because maybe the music is not, doing it for me, but technically it's whoa. But I mean, some great guitarists that are doing some great music too. Oh gosh, I mean, where do you start?
So I mean, there are guys out there that completely shred, and they're showing off. So guys like Rick Graham, Andy James spring to mind, who are just so clean.
Andy James is a great. Yeah, I think James is a great player. But I guess of maybe the lesser known guys, Steven Toronto is a really, really cool shredder.
Okay.
You've got Manuel Fernandez Gardens. Is it Gardens? He's a fantastic player that also has a band which is doing some really cool tracks. Now, he's also similar to me in the fact that he's kind of really utilizing Instagram a lot and posting some really cool videos now. So there's guys like that which are playing both sides of it, because I think a lot of the time it was either you're doing music or you're doing socials. And I think the modern musician really has to have a natural balance of both of those elements. It just is, in the fact that, Corona has happened, and it's put even more pressure for the modern musician to have, a foot in both sides of the music industry, So, brands want exposure more than ever, and they need guys who can deliver a great content and have an audience so they can get paid.
But you say, sorry, mate, you go.
Oh, no. So, but there's some, but I think guys like Steven Toronto is a great example of that, where he's a fantastic shredder, really recognized as a great technical player, but can also deliver a really cool song at the same time.
That's the missing thing.
Has a social.
Yeah, so I mentioned that some of those guys, Rick Graham and all that, and it's very impressive, the things they're doing, but it's more showing off their technique and what they can do. It's very rare to find guys that are putting out nice music, though, and that's what I really admire about when I got your album, the New Beginnings.
Oh.
Fresh Beginnings, New Beginnings?
New Beginnings, thank you.
It was listenable music, and that's rare to find. There's a million guys out there you just go, whoa, but that are putting out nice listenable music.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's like I mentioned, I think just I have such a short attention span for all things super technical, so I like to just flash it up now and again.
Yep.
And then just kind of dial it back and just think about, the groove of the song and, how you deliver something.
Yep.
And that's something that I've kind of always probably had. Going back, I had an album called 91 to 95, which is like a teenage album, instrumental guitar album that I did after the Steve Vai produced Bad for Good record.
Okay.
And that's a similar approach. It's like very melody-led, catchy songs. You melodies that you hope people will whistle and sing a couple of hours later after they've played, switched the record off.
Yep.
Much prefer that type of approach. But some guys, you got to, Andy James is a great example of somebody that has really cool tracks, technically like outstanding, but has a great sense of melody and timing as well. So yeah. Andy's he's a good friend of mine and a fellow kiesel guy, and he's a really cool guy, but does some really fantastic stuff as well with the playing.
Cool. Maybe you can put me in touch with him so I could get him on for a bit of a chat. We'll talk about that later. Amp-wise, you're Axe Effects now, or do you sort of chop and change between different things?
No. So, we can actually try something a little bit ad hoc here. Now, I don't know if this is the best thing to do, but I can show you part of my setup if you'd like. So, what's going on behind all of this? Should we do it? Should we see what happens?
Why not? Let's do it.
Okay. Let me switch on one of my cameras. And you'll see. All right. So, let me know if this works. Yep.
Oh, look at that. Nice.
All right. So right now, basically, let me switch on the iMac. So right now, my gain sound is going through this Victory Sheriff 22 head.
Oh, cool.
And I don't really play with a speaker, so it's going into this Boss Tube Amp Expander, which is a really great load box.
Everyone's raving about those.
And from that, yes, it gives just so many options. And then it goes into my audio interface. So, but up front before all that is my pedal board, which is under the desk over there.
Wow.
So right now, for my gain sound, my guitar is going into a line selector, and that gives us two different type of sounds. It's hitting my pedal board. So my gain sound is basically using the precision drive, which is this guy here. Mm-hmm. And then that goes into the amp, into the load box, and then all of the wet dry reverb stuff is done over there.
Wow.
So that's that setup, but the switcher also is set so I can have a clean sound, which is all in software. But really, really digging this Sheriff. I've been really liking what amps can do with load boxes because you get the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
There's you. Hi.
Hey, hello.
And there's one of the racks of guitars. Over there, so some of the classic guitars from over the years.
Wow.
And I have different rooms for different, guitars. So that's that setup. And there's a little bit of the Passion Warfare record.
Cool. That's a nice little setup, mate. Now the Tube Amp Expander. When I was talking to Steve Stevens the other day, he was saying that he recently got one of those, and he doesn't think that he will ever mic a cab live again after using that. I was just going through some of my footage of doing some mic checks before we went live, and I always forget what we talk about live and what's actually beforehand. And he was just going, man, we plugged this thing in, and the sound guy just come running down, just going, that thing, man, yes. So I'm yet to try that.
Yeah,
there's a few different options.
It's great. I'm loving it. When I did the NAMM show performances, I actually went all in software, and I also got some great sounds in software. And with companies like Neural DSP and Brainworks Plugin Alliance, those are two of my favorites right now. We can get some amazing sound and all in the box stuff happening, and then have the luxury of just taking a laptop with an audio interface. Got to be really a Thunderbolt or a USB-C, native USB-C interface. Some of the regular USB 2 stuff, you just, you get too much latency.
Yep.
But the luxury of just handing the sound engineer left and right, don't touch it, just turn it up, is like so good. That's one thing when I learned, actually, because my setup for the Dragon Force tour was a little bit different. I was using the Boss GT1000, and I was disabling the cab blocks, and I was using orange speakers on stage. And I quickly realized, on some of the size stages that we're playing, you'd be in one spot, it would sound great. You'd move 2 feet away and bang, it's just like dreadful. So sound engineers at every level will kind of absolutely kill you. So so for the future McRocklin Hutch stuff, we'll probably be using all software guitar amp stuff. Brainworks, Plugin Alliance, and Neural DSP probably being two of the guys that we use for the guitar tones. And that can sound absolutely great as well. But you just need to have, an approach. I think it's really easy to make some of this stuff sound really bad as well. So you just need to start off with, the gain stage, get the right amount of gain. For me, it's like I played with a sound that. Like I can play rhythm, I can play lead stuff. It actually has a little bit less lead because we're in the middle of tracking something that's really specific. And I was like, I can't really change the settings because I need to continue tracking it today. So it has a tad little bit less gain than what I'd normally play with, but generally the sound that I have, like you can go in and out of lead, rhythm, and it's like perfect. It's not overly saturated. But it still sounds heavy.
Cool.
But so I mean, we're just at a blessed time where there's so many good options.
There is, isn't there?
Days.
Yeah. So I thought when I said, "Are you using Axe Effects?" I thought I'd seen you online using one. And then I actually saw a clip last night on YouTube of you playing at NAMM, and it looked like you were just plugged into a laptop. But I thought, oh, maybe there's an Axe Effects underneath that. But then when you spun the camera around to show the rig you've got there, it's like, oh, very nice, very nice.
There's a lot of stuff going on in this room, yeah. Yeah, and then the stuff to this side of the wall is like probably more gear. It's just what can I say?
But that's what happens. That's what happens. It accumulates.
I know.
We're always chasing that tone, that never-ending quest for tone. Yeah.
I know, and I've got to say right now with this Victory Head, it's the happiest I've been with a lead rhythm tone forever. So it just has that nasty with this precision drive in front of it. It's like it's got that bite and that real kind of punch you in the face type of sound, but it's got like detail. I love it. And you combine that with Fishman pickups, and you're on another
I was going to
level.
ask you about that because everyone's using the Fishman Fluence lately. Well, not everyone, but that seems very popular. And I haven't played them yet. I actually my first live stream chat was with Frank Falbo, who designed them.
Oh, right. Yeah, Frank's great. He's a nice guy.
Yeah. It was very nice of him to do it such early on for me. But what is it about those pickups that you really like?
It's the detail. Well, there's two things. One is they are active in the sense that they require battery, but they're not active in sound. They're basically designed to sound like the best passive pickup you've ever heard. So they're very predictable, as in, everyone will sound the same. So when I have three of my main guitars that are ash bodies, Tosin pickups, Tosin Fluence pickups, same kind of neck, they perform. There's none like, it's like they are very, very, very similar sounding guitars, so they have a consistency. The other thing that is really great about the Fishman Fluence pickups, though, is when you're sitting in front of a computer and pedal board and stuff like that, there's virtually no noise from them. You sit in front of that stuff with a passive pickup, and you're getting you're looking for that sweet spot. We've all done it where we're like, okay, that's the sweet spot. Let hit record. With the design of Fishman Fluence pickups, you don't really get that. It's just like they're very quiet. If you're on stage, you don't really have the noise issues that you can get with other pickups. So great for that. But when you play them, the response is excellent. But you get this detail. So even when you have like a heavy sound, you hear every individual note ringing out like great.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with passive pickups. And I always like DiMarzio's tone zones, and most of my Ibanez have those, and some of them have the new Fishman stuff in them. But when you use Fishman and you dial your sound in for their pickups, it's very difficult to then go back to a passive pickup. You've ruined it. That's it. It's game over.
Okay. So listening to your tone just playing tonight, and I've got it all in my headphone this morning for you. It's almost like you've got a parallel clean path going with your distortion, is what it sounds like to me, clarity wise. But I guess if you did that
would be.
If you tried to do that in real life,
one tone at a time.
Yep.
Yeah. One tone. A little bit of a fingers one. There's just a lot of detail that you get in the tone, and then it's partly down probably the precision drives. It's just thinning out that low end woolliness, so it's not too kind of thick going into the amp. So a lot of it's like tone building. But yeah, I just once I eventually start using Fishman, then that was it. Like every single main guitar had to have Fishman pickups put in them. It's just like it's just like I say, it's just no going back when you get used to the what they do. They're just great, and they're a really cool bunch of guys as well. And actually, going to be doing some really some very cool live streams on some of their products like Triple Play and stuff very soon as well.
And so they make those in single coil size as well. They make single coils, don't they?
They do. Yeah, I have a guitar here, which is a Delos, and this has HSS, and they are also Fishman Fluence pickups, and they're really, really cool as well. This one has the battery pack, so every 3 or 4 months you can just USB straight in.
Nice.
And keeps it all topped up. But yeah, this is an awesome guitar. I love
Isn't
this
it?
thing.
Look at that.
Really cool.
Wow. Very nice. Yeah. Now, you said before about, and I can see that's ash, the wood in your guitar that you're holding in your lap now. Yeah. It's funny, when I was talking to Frank Falbo, he kind of was... I had 2 guys on, and one guy was talking about tone wood, and Frank would just roll his eyes and go, no such thing. But I'm listening to your guitar, and it sounds to me like ash. And I don't know if that's all mumbo jumbo, but I've got an ash Strat. I've got a Richie Kotzen Strat back there somewhere that I've heavily modified. Doesn't look like it anymore.
Yeah.
But there's a quality that I'm hearing in your guitars that I hear in that. Just a nice clarity in the front end of the note. Is that why you go for ash?
Yeah. For me, the reason is all my Ibanezes over the years, the occasional one, like the newer RGs, were like mahogany bodies and stuff, but predominantly all the gems were basswood, which in the industry is generally considered a cheap, poor wood. Mm-hmm. So when I went to kiesel, I'm like, okay, so I've normally had these basswood guitars, and they were like, okay, so a better version of that wood would be ash. I'm like, all right, cool. And then kiesel's so flexible that we can decide. I really like lightweight guitars. I like just something that's like easy to maneuver, and
Yep.
So now I just kind of choose lightweight pieces of ash, and they build them on lighter pieces of ash, and it sounds great. And if you get them like this, where it's like an open, a raw tone finish, you get to see kind of some of the grain and stuff that's on the guitar. And it feels so like, I don't know, it just feels so comfortable. Even when you get hot, it's like, it's just not sticky, and it's like,
Yep.
You always feel in control. And it also, this particular one has a roasted maple neck. So again, it's just all like really tactile. And I don't know, it's a great feeling wood. and it sounds great. But that's how it came about. Just used to playing basswood bodies, I guess, with ibanez, and the next step on in terms of a better version of that would be ash.
Yep.
Generally the
I'm going to go
deal,
run back up the back and grab my ash one, which was the Richie Kotzen, but you won't recognise it as being one. Let me just go back here.
Nice.
Yeah, I am wireless. So this was one of those pukey yellow things that he had, and I stripped the paint off it, and it had a veneer on top, and then I stained it. But so that's just a veneer on top, but the back is very similar to what you've got there.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Now check out what I did. I tried to copy the Guthrie Govan, cutaway here, and
Yeah.
So
you got that access.
Nice. Yeah. I just did it from photos. A friend's actually got one, and I took a look at it and went, oh, okay, that wasn't exactly the same, but
nice.
But there's just a sound about this, and it's...
That's great.
Yeah, I think it's the ash, but there's true single coils in there, and they are noisy as all hell. Like, there's certain venues I just can't play this guitar because of the noise factor. I'm going to give the Fluence a try. Hopefully that'll retain the sound without the buzz.
You need to put... because you need to put the battery pack in them. Like my early attempts with them was like I had to get my guitar tech to put a hole in the guitar, and I was like, okay. Eventually did that, but like I say, like once you get past that, there's no going back. It's just really, really cool. I dig them. Yeah.
Well,
really,
if somebody like Greg Cox playing them, and he's known for wrangling some nice vintage instruments, and if you can turn a player like that, they must be good. What is the holy grail of tone to you? Like, is there a particular artist that has a tone and you just go, well, that's it, just there, isn't it?
I honestly, I'm super happy with this tone that I have now. It's like I could keep chasing it and maybe go to a different valve head maker, and I have some more unusual branded valve heads in here that I've tried, and does a great job. I really one type of thing I really like is I like the old school plexi sound, but with like a precision drive from Horizon devices in front of it.
Cool.
So that just kind of gives it that new old sort of sound, so you can have that dynamics in your playing. It's not overly saturated, but when you hit it, you kind of get this kind of punch and stuff, and for the most part, I think, this is just obviously straight into the door, so there's not a lot of additional EQ going on afterwards. So, like I said, a little bit less gain than I usually would have, but that's really doing it for me. I probably wouldn't want to tweak it too much. And one thing I really like about this setup is it makes you commit, because you have the amp tone up front and you're not running the amp tone as a VST, so it takes away that, let's go and change the IR later, let's go and change the it kills that off. So it goes back to back in the day when I was in studios recording to tape. Get your amp tone, stick a mic in front of it, that's it, all right, let's roll, hit record, and you're committed, it's done. You can't go back and tweak the IR and tweak the amp profile. You can put reverb delays and EQs on, but the tone is done, So this way it kind of forces me to not overly think about going back and forwards and, tweaking the sound and stuff, It's like, good. And actually, when I work with software, one of the first things I often do is I get the tone that I like without reverb delay and chorus and whatever else. And as soon as the performance is like recorded, I just freeze and render it and get rid of the plugin, so I'm just left with the distorted render file. Take away that option of like endless tweaking. It doesn't mean it's going to sound bad. It's just one less thing that you've got an option of going back and playing around with, and just distractions.
Totally.
a lot of people end up just tweaking mixes for months on end, but not releasing anything.
Yep.
It's like,
Yep. Deadline's your best friend in that department. It's just like, when's the mix done? When you hit the deadline. But too many options is not a good thing. And I learnt this years ago. Friend of mine is actually in the chat there, Dominic Simeone. Hey Dom. He says, hey Rick and Thomas. When I lived when I lived with Dom back when I was like 21 or so, he had a drum machine that I borrowed off him, which had like 5 kick drum sounds in it, and I had I think it was his 4-track as well that I was borrowing, and we'd stripe one track of the tape with a time code so I could sync up my Atari, all that kind of stuff. So I had 3 tracks. I had a drum machine that had 5 kick drum sounds, and every few days I would write and produce a whole new song. Then I noticed later on in life that I would have 5,000 kick drum sounds, and I would just sit there all day trying to pick the right thing, So I hear what you're saying about just getting rid of those choices and just create.
If it sounds good in the moment,
run with it.
Just flatten it. Get rid of the plugin.
Yep.
All right, we're done with that.
Yep.
And Hutch is especially good at that. McRocklin Hutch. He is probably the most prolific output producer that I've ever known. Periodly, his like workflow, his like ability to make things sound a certain way quickly without getting bogged down in details. He has a specific process. Okay, I'm not going to touch that because that's a detail. Right now, we're not in the detail mode. We're really all about getting this track ready to send over to Thomas. So he can turn out like great tracks in, probably like 2 or 3 a day is what he averages. And they're all documented. He has these splurges, as he calls them.
Yeah.
And basically has a tracker. So when we sit and we have like these sort of writing sessions, song sessions, you can literally just go to like tracks which are completely done, completely mixed, or ideas which are not detailed but are actually laid out, fully arranged and stuff, But he wakes up at like 5 a.m. Probably, I think he sits for like 5-10 minutes, clears his mind, and then just goes at it. And then he's just like high output, like his workflow and process is second to none.
Amazing.
He's a
cool,
talented guy.
And I guess working with somebody like that, teaming up with them, that must rub off on you, and you just think, wow, we're just blitzing through this. So it sounds like a good pairing.
Yeah. Well, the Writing Out album that we released, we just did that, and from start to finish, probably in like 2 or 3 months or so. And bear in mind, there's actually a lot of stuff on there, and I end up getting all of the final Ableton projects sent over here. So those 2 or 3 months probably could have been condensed down further if it wasn't for me kind of getting sucked into the details and my little bit of obsessiveness kicking in. But like for a 10-track album, from like concept to everything, in such a short period of time, and then we had tracks ready for a follow-up and all sorts as well. So
cool.
Yeah, high output, but no pondering. Just go straight for it and do it.
No overthinking. That's probably the best way. Yeah. So I just recalled before I accidentally hit the wrong button, folks. I'm going to explain what happened before, why the transmission dropped out. You see, I have this little controller in my hand where I can change between the scenes. Like, hey, there's me. Hey, there's Thomas. Hey, there's the both of us. And if you see up there's a little button that says finish. That normally says start, and that's how I start my broadcasts. And I accidentally hit that. I dropped something, and that's why everything came to an end. But before we did, I did see somebody had asked the question about, are you into Buckethead? Because a lot of his music has an electronic element as well as the shred kind of thing. And somebody, Ben Amor, asked whether you're into Buckethead.
I like Buckethead. Yeah, as a player. I probably don't really listen to him that often, but every time I see him playing, I really like his vibe. And it's probably because I actually don't really listen to a lot of guitar music in general. When I'm listening to music now, it's
most likely something completely that's very far away from guitar. But I certainly appreciate what he does. I love the sort of stage shows and stuff that he does, and kind of the stuttery stuff with the kill switches and stuff. Love all of that stuff. So I think it's fantastic. But maybe I don't think like there would have been so much of an influence on my playing from him. But every time I see him, especially some of the re-uploads that people upload on Instagram. He's really cool. Really cool. Great player.
Awesome. I don't know if you can see, I've actually got I'm not that really into him myself, but up behind me, I've got a little mannequin head there with a wig and a KFC bucket on it. And occasionally stupid little videos pop out of my channel featuring Fuck It Head. And I always tell people that's my assistant coming out. If anybody else has got any questions before I wrap things up, now would be a good time to ask if you have any questions for Thomas. I'm torn whether to put those two episodes, this one and the other one, together as one and re-upload, or whether just have a part 1 and part 2. We'll work all that out.
That's a good idea. Yeah, just leave them up. Yeah,
that could work.
Link the second one in the first one.
Yep.
Continue it on.
Yeah, because I did mess up there, but that has taught me. I'm going to take that button off there. I'm going to actually go and press a mouse to start and stop my broadcasts now, rather than accidentally drop my controller.
Yeah.
Kill the vibe.
Yeah. I have, is it a Stream Deck, is it?
Yep. That's what I've got here.
I'm using a tablet to do the Stream Deck functionality. Yeah. And I have an end button, so like at the end it does that.
Yep, cool.
But it doesn't actually end the broadcast, so then I have to go over to the laptop to stop it.
Yeah,
that's how I have my safety net. It's
okay.
Because I know I'll be and I'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good idea. But it's one of those things that you don't figure that out until accidents happen, right? So it's
exactly. And you think, how do we stop that ever happening again? So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to take that off my controller, because I do not want that happening again.
Yeah.
Thomas, it's been fantastic talking to you, man. I really appreciate your time. And I look
pleasure.
at this. I've even got applause on mine. You can't hear that, but there's a little bit of a. So I do thank you, man. Folks, please subscribe, all that kind of thing. I've had some ripper guests on in the last couple of weeks, and I don't have the subscriber count to show for it. I've actually had quite a few people message me and go, "Man, I've just come across your channel. I can't believe this. Why have you only got X amount of subscribers?" So you guys can help if you watch this by hitting the button. Same with Thomas. Is it Thomas McRocklin on YouTube?
It's just /McRocklin. So bang, bang. There we go.
Let me just go full screen there so people can see that. Yep. Nice one.
Simple. Everything is just /McRocklin. I spend a lot of time on Instagram, so I guess if you guys want to see an insight of my pedal boards and how I work, I'm always posting stories on the behind the scenes stuff, getting tones, changing guitar strings, all the geek stuff that we all kind of love. But if you guys are interested in checking out more and getting more out of your own guitar playing, I'd definitely head to schoolofmcrock.com. and take that for a spin. It's the feedback that I'm getting is just having such a big impact on people's playing, and I'm super happy with the progress that we're making. So take it for a spin, see what you think.
Well, I'm definitely going to sign up for it. And we do have some more questions, actually. Shane Dunn has just said that he'll have to subscribe. He didn't know that we had you on. Shane, if you have a look at my playlist, mate, I had Steve Stevens, Jennifer Batten, Dave Friedman, guys from Hughes and Kettner, and a whole bunch of people that I'm connected with in the industry. But he's asking, did Thomas have a big practice routine to get his skills to the level that they are now? And I was thinking as well.
I started again in 2017. So 2017, back end of that year was when I started to go nuts, in terms of okay, I want to get better at picking. I want to have these elements in my playing, and I want to approach it like this. And during that time, I was I call it my living room time, because I was predominantly sitting on the couch, very close to an amp, no effects, very low gain type of sound. And
that helped expose everything, all the flaws in my playing that I wanted to kind of iron out and introduce all the new stuff into my playing. But during that time, I'd be averaging maybe 6 to 8 hours of hardcore playing, practicing, breaking it up, some fun stuff, but also a lot of real heavy lifting, kind of working on stuff for the first time. And when I was a kid, I was always like the type of kid, like I actually left school at a very young age and had private tutors. So in my mind, the time that I should have been at school was at least the time that I put into the guitar. So 9 until 4 every day, and often it would be so much more than that because after later in the evening I'd have rehearsals with bands or whatever gig and blah blah blah, all the other stuff. So I'd be averaging about 8 hours a day when I was a kid. Now I know like these days a lot of people have like busy lives, families and stuff, and I do too. So now I don't play like 6 to 8 hours a day. I just don't have the time for that. Sometimes I take a day or two off, but I have these certain things that I do in those days that really help to keep the finger strength. In fact, there's a free lesson which is on my site, schoolofmcrock.com, which actually is those exercises that I do on the days that I just don't even have half an hour, 20 minutes to put into my playing.
Cool.
And these are the things that help to kind of keep my fingers, because it doesn't take long at all. It takes like 2 or 3 days, and your abilities just like go.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I have like a day where I'm like helping with the video editing or mixing the next track or whatever else, I have these little things that I do on the guitar, for like 30 seconds to a minute, and I feel like, okay, that's definitely going to maintain where I want to be. So, bit of a long answer. Was it Don?
That was Shane Dunn.
Shane Dunn, sorry.
Shane
so a bit
Dunn,
of a long answer, Shane. But at the same time, I think it's really important to maintain, that you enjoy playing. So if playing hours and hours at the end, but at a certain point the frustration's kicked in, put it down, come back the next day. Don't feel like you really need to force it, because ultimately that's not going to help too much. So just try and keep that balance,
We got a nice comment there from Richard Embry, who said, awesome show, guys. So interesting. Thomas, that guitar tone is one of the best he's ever heard. Amazing, he's saying. So, Richard, if you saw just before, he showed us what he's playing through there. It's some really cool stuff there.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, appreciate it. So definitely no more tone chasing. I'll just stick with it because I'll end up ruining it.
Yeah. You just got to leave well enough alone sometimes, huh? And I think you've found that point.
Yes.
Cool. So I am going to wind it up for good this time. Appreciate the detail from somebody, they say there. Thomas, thank you so much, mate. And
thanks for having me on, man. It's been great to chat. I'm going to get a cup of tea now and do the very English thing, have a cup of tea and get on with some production stuff. And thanks for having me on, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much. See you later, guys.